Oh, I'm definitely not naturally good at technical trails. My collegiate coach once told me I was the worst downhill runner he'd ever seen. That, luckily, as well, is very trainable. So much of like the marathon, you just get used to very flat roads. Like marathoners are notoriously terrible on trails. And so I just needed to like devote the time and effort to really nailing it down and doing technical stuff. Couple runs. I definitely I messaged Cliff after this one loop that I had done in Sedona. I was like, I think I might be the worst technical runner in all of trail running. I don't know if I can do this. He's like, you're fine. You're going to adapt. And I did.
And her goal setting has been, appropriate for that limitation and for that progression. She's not coming into the sport and picking the most technical mountain races possible. Black Canyon, sure, there's definitely some technical sections on there, but at the same time, it's a very runnable race that suits the type of athlete that Molly is.
Yeah. You're listening to Endurance Unlimited, a TrainingPeaks podcast for athletes and coaches, no matter what you're training for. Dial in those workouts with deep insights and cutting-edge science from the most prominent voices in the endurance and hybrid sports world. Whether you're a lifelong fan of the marathon or a newcomer to the grit of trails, today's episode is one for the books. We're diving into a career evolution that is redefining what it means to be a hybrid athlete at the highest level. Our first guest needs very little introduction to the running world. She is a 2020 Olympic marathon bronze medalist and a 2:23 marathoner who famously stunned the world by making the Olympic podium in only her third career race at the distance. Most recently, Molly Seidel has been trading the super shoes for lugs and the pavement for technical single track. Fresh off a dominant outright win and course record at the Bandera 50K in January, Molly is officially making her transition into the ultra world, with her sights set on the prestigious Western States 100. But behind every great athlete is a strategic architect. Joining Molly is the man tasked with translating that world-class marathon engine into a durable, trail-ready machine, Cliff Pittman. Cliff is a coach at Carmichael Training Systems and serves as their coaching development director. He is an expert in durability, the science of helping athletes resist breakdown over massive distances. And he's the one helping Molly navigate the technical, nutritional, and mental shifts required to move from a 2-hour road race to an epic 100-miler. Today, we're talking about the why behind the move to dirt, the specific training blocks used to build ultra durability, and what it's like to coach one of the most talented runners in American history through her most ambitious reset yet. All right, such an honor to have Molly Seidel, Cliff Pittman here on the show with me. I think this is the first time that you guys have actually been interviewed together on a podcast, so I sort of have a little bit of an exclusive here, right?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
All right, awesome. Where are you guys calling in from? Molly, where are you?
I'm up in my home in Flagstaff, Arizona right now, trying to get in a little burst of altitude before Black Canyon. But yeah, enjoying being home.
All right, we're going to get into that. Black Canyon is 3 weeks away or something?
Oh, God, yeah. I keep telling myself it's 4 weeks, but I think it's closer to 3.
All right,
3.5, sure.
Oh, yeah. So, Cliff, where are you?
I'm in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Yeah,
all right.
We're preparing ourselves for a foot of snow here in the next few days. So, when you live in the South, everybody goes absolutely crazy with a chance of 1 inch of snow. So, you can imagine.
Well, I would love to take it off your hands because we are hurting big time in Colorado.
That's what I've heard.
So, Cliff, I'd love to dig into your background. You're the man behind the scenes, the Wizard of Oz here, pulling all the strings. So tell us about your background in coaching and I mean, you run trail as well. So racing and your favorite race and, tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah, very fortunate to kind of essentially live the dream. Tell people all the time that my background is a bunch of randomness and chaos that eventually, after a long time, came together, wrapped up into one job. So if we go back, I was in the military for 10 years. So I enlisted right out of high school after 9/11. And so that was my first career. And then after I exited the military, I started a second career in corporate America, working for a Fortune 500 company, and gathered some corporate experience. And a lot of my leadership in the military transitioned into that. And in the background, I had this whole running thing that I just had a passion and hobby for that went back all the way to childhood, and continued to work with athletes on the side. And then eventually was introduced into trail ultra running around 2017, 2018, and built my own coaching practice. And it was my ticket out of corporate America, and matched up a lot of my random backgrounds within executive coaching, leadership, and my background as an Army fitness trainer all into one. Got linked up with CTS eventually, was mentored by Jason Koop. Yeah. And then this job as director of coaching opened up after a few years with the company. And really, that's when I was able to kind of tie everything together. And so now I specialize in working with ultra trail athletes specifically, not exclusively, but that's really where I primarily focus, as well as leading the team of coaches.
So director of coaching, is that coach education?
It is. Yeah, it's mentorship. It's coach education. I'm responsible for organizing and delivering our weekly continuing education, bringing in academics from all over the world. We just had Dr. Steven Seiler last week present to the team.
Awesome.
As well as names like Asker Jukendrup and a lot of other prominent figures in the space to make sure that our team just really stays at the forefront of the coaching space.
Cool. And you're racing yourself?
Loosely. Yeah. I'm 40 plus now, so racing is relative. I participate, and I don't quite have the physiology that Molly has. So I get out there and have fun, and learn what I can, and also try to just go through the process that I put athletes through as well, and try to just be completely saturated in all things trail ultra running.
Yeah, awesome. Molly, where did the run bug start for you?
I think we got to go pretty far back for that one.
All
Unlike
right,
Cliff, I'm a bit of a one-trick pony. Running's kind of always been the thing for me. I really started like when I was quite young. Just like fell into running as a child, didn't come from a running family, was really pushed my parents to like let me join my church's track team, and like sought out opportunities. I went to an extremely small school in Wisconsin, and so our school did not have a track or cross country team, so I had to start those myself. And yeah, just like kind of from the get-go, I was pretty good at it, but also just like really enjoyed the sport. I think it worked very well with my brain chemistry, and ended up being able to get a full ride scholarship to Notre Dame my senior year of high school. I also won Foot Locker out of high school, which is the National Cross Country Championships. And from there, it kind of like, I wouldn't say it's been like a smooth trajectory by any means, but I would say at least within the pro road and track ranks, like it was a pretty linear trajectory of like good in high school, had some struggles in college, but then won a couple NCAA championships in college, then struggled for a few years as a pro, but eventually went on to qualify for the Olympic marathon team and get a medal in Tokyo. And yeah, now the ultra running has really been a bit of a deviation from the typical path of a pro runner in the US, at least, but it's been very fun.
That was short and sweet, but very a lot more behind all of that.
I try to keep it concise.
I know. Where do we want to take it from here? No, so like 2020, you go to the trials, you get second. Mm-hmm. You go on, get the bronze in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. I mean, was that were you just like in the mindset of like, this is going to happen? Or was this all like surprise along the way? How were you taking all that in terms of like your mindset of like, yeah, this is the natural next step. Yeah, of course I'm on the podium. Or walk us through that stage of your career.
I think for me, qualifying for the team was a huge shock. That was the first marathon I ever ran, and running that marathon kind of came out of a bit of desperation in my pro track career. I was a 10K runner, and I was getting very severe injuries over and over. The level that you have to train at for professional track is insane, and my body just could not handle it. And so my previous coach, John Green, who I had worked with, we'd only been working together for about 6 months at that point. He was my teammate, actually. And we just fell into marathon training because that was what allowed my body to stay healthy. Just a lot of mileage, lower intensity on the workouts, relatively. And when I stepped to the line at trials, I went into it confident, but I was starting in the third wave. By no means was I even considered to be a contender in that race, but I think I was confident. And when I got second, that was truly a shock. And then when the pandemic hit, I think if the Olympics had been run in 2020, I would not have gotten a medal. I would have been happy to be there. The fact that I got an extra year and a half, that time period allowed me to start believing that I was more than just someone who was showing up to the Olympics, that I could be a contender for a medal. So once I got to Tokyo, I remember the final phone call that I had to my family. It was to my brother and sister the night before the race. And I told them, like, I'm going to try to get a medal tomorrow. Like, I believe that I can do it. And I think for a lot of people, that would have been kind of a crazy thing for an American woman to say that. But I knew what that race was. I knew it was going to be hot. I knew it was going to be tough. And in those kinds of conditions, I really thrive. So was able to come away with the third American medal in the marathon.
And didn't you go on into New York City after that and set the fastest female marathon time?
Yeah, I set the American female course record. And that was a short build on that. I was actually really struggling after the Olympics and very much considered not doing that race. I broke 2 ribs during the build, and that was one of those races where I think I stepped to the line and be like, I have no idea how this is going to go, but I'm just going to race all out and see what it comes out to. So that was a very cool experience to see, like, okay, things can, like, the entire build can be horrible and you can still go out and make something special of it.
Wow. So these, you obviously 2024 was a tough year. Walk us through. Yeah. Walk us through those trials and tribulations, and that sort of started this snowball effect, if you will, of like setting new goals from there, but you didn't maybe know about it at the time. But what difficulties were you going through in 2024?
Yeah, I think 2024 was almost kind of like the culmination of those previous 3 years of the way that I trained for the 2020 Olympics was deeply unsustainable. I think I was really in the mindset of like, I've got to mimic what other people are doing and almost do the things that I think like a pro marathoner would do. And it garnered me a lot of very quick success in the sport, almost more success than I was ready for, to be honest. And then I experienced kind of like a 3 years of slow, methodical breakdown due to that process because I was chronically underfueling, I was chronically overtraining, and the intensity that is required to remain at the top of marathoning is so difficult. I had heard an analogy somewhere that, like, someone said it's like standing on top of a mountain. Like, the air is very thin. It's very hard to remain up there for a long time and your body starts breaking down. And I definitely felt that. But because I'd had so much success in 2020, and I think when you win a medal, you're like, well, objectively, this is the only way to be able to do it. And so I approached 2024 like, oh, if I just do all the exact same things that I did going into 2020, I'm going to make the team. I will be a contender for a medal again. And my body just completely shut down. Like, I broke my kneecap, which is not a usual thing to break, just in training, just from running. It wasn't an impact injury. And I had severe hormonal disruption that when I broke the kneecap and I kept continuing to try and train for the trials the week before the trials, I was like, this just isn't going to happen, and made the decision to pull. It took me almost an entire year to be able to run again after that, just because my body was so down and out after that. And it took a long time to realize, like, I can't keep doing it like this. Otherwise, I'm going to have to retire, like, in my early 30s, which I don't want to do.
Yeah. So then how do things go from breaking patella to taking up trail running? Why trail?
It was a lot of stops and starts. So when I broke my kneecap, all I could do was uphill skiing for a while. I actually come from a competitive downhill skiing background. Yeah. And I love it. Like, I basically drove out to my aunt's place in Colorado, stayed with her for about a month and just skied. Like the day of the Olympic trials, I was like on Snowmass Mountain, just being like, hey, I'm not going to look at results. Like I'm going to just make sure like my teammate Jessa Hansen is doing okay, but like I can't watch this race. I need to just be skiing right now. Um, and just basically did a bunch of that. I got really strong at uphill and I was like, hey, maybe I'll do the Canyons 50K just to like see how it goes. That was kind of like, I had like considered like, hey, like this would be a fun thing to do because the whole rest of the year is a wash. My knee was still not healthy enough by the time Canyons came around, so I ended up pulling out of that. But I think in my mind that like bug had been set of like, hey, like I enjoy trail running. I enjoy being out on the mountain. I think it hits a very different thing in my brain than road running does, and I feel happier when I'm out there. And then with that realization, it took me another basically full year to realize like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be road running. Maybe I should be trail running. It was a lot of stops and starts. And 2024 was just a shit show of a year. I like had my appendix out in France. I like could barely train. It was a frustrating year, to be honest. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So again, a little bit more about like why trails. If you're injured running, you're injured running. Like it's just another subset of the sport running. So how is trail different? You think like 100 miles, 50 miles, whatever, that's gotta like injure me compared to 26 miles. You know, how is it that much different?
I actually see it as quite different just because so much of marathoning, at least at the level that I'm doing it, it's a lot of really hard running on the roads. And basically like I just kept finding that like especially with the introduction of carbon plated shoes, it's hard on your body in a completely different way. Like you're wrecked after like a tempo on the roads or a steady state out there in a way that like I could do longer trail runs and not hurt in the same way, or at the very least just not having to spend so much time at lactate threshold allowed like my system, like basically I was able to get my energy balance back. Like I was able to like get a consistent cycle, things that I never had as a pro road runner. And so I think overall, not only was my mental state better when I was trail running, but I was overall healthier in a way that I just could not sustain as a road runner. I think even this year, like flashing forward to when I decided to do New York this fall in the middle of our threshold block, just the way that like my mental health kind of like plummeted during that block and Cliff saw it firsthand. Yeah.
We'll come back to that. We're going to come back to that. So,
yeah.
So along the way, you decide a need for a new coach, or did you go without a coach for a while? And then you, at some point, you're like, I need guidance in this new sport. How did this come about, switching coaches from your old marathon coach to Cliff?
Yeah. So John had been like, it had gotten to the point where I was basically just writing so much of my own training just because my body was so up and down. And John is like, I think he's probably one of the best marathon coaches in the world. But like, that's a tough situation to be in where like, I just kept breaking, even with like the smallest amount of marathon work. Like I'd had multiple times where I tried to build up for a marathon and would just break. And so after like, probably after a couple months and going into this previous summer, I had a conversation with John, who it's always tough when it's like I had enormous success under him. He's one of my best friends, but being like, hey, I think my path is going to be different right now. Like I'm going to be moving off the roads. I need to find someone who's specifically trail because I think that's where my heart is right now. And I think the mark of a truly great coach is that he was able to be like, hey, like this is not where you're like, my career and your career are taking different paths right now. And we are still like, he still cares about me enormously. Like I'm still part of Verde, our team out here, but he was able to say like, hey, like it's time for you to be able to move on. And that was hard. Like we both cried, but I think that was really special to me because when I left my previous coach, when I was in a pro track group in Boston and then moved to John, it was very bad. Like, I think John has no ego, and that's what I love about him, and him being able to be like, hey, like for your growth, I think you need to like find somebody new and I'll like support you in whatever you do. That meant a lot to me.
So how do you end up calling Cliff?
I got linked up with Cliff actually through one of my friends in the Austin running community. Ford, he has been coached by Coop since he was basically in high school. He was like a high school trail running phenom, has worked with Coop for the last probably 10 to 12 years. And when Ford knew that I had left my previous coach, was planning on doing ultra trail and was just doing my own programming, he was like, you got to talk to Coop. Like, he's the best, like one of the best in business. Like, he'll steer you straight. I had a great conversation with Coop, but he was overloaded. Like, he couldn't take any more people. And so I was like, well, that's that. I'll keep coaching myself. And he's like, actually, like, I'll link you on to my guy, Cliff. So I'm like, cool, I'll talk to anybody. We'll see how it goes. And like, my conversation with Coop was great, but I feel like I immediately vibed with Cliff. Like, we just like really hit it off. And I was like, this seems like a really good guy. Like, I want to be able to like have a coach that I feel like I get along with really well. And yeah, seems like he knows his stuff. And so we started working together last July, I want to say. And I've been making his life hell ever since.
Yeah. Cliff, what was that like? I mean, having someone like Molly reach out to you, it's such a great honor.
It is a huge honor. And frankly, like, I don't think there's any point in the coach's career that wouldn't be intimidating, just to be fully transparent, because you have this, and Molly's been great coaching you, but the challenge is not working with Molly. The challenge is you get a world-class athlete who's been at the pinnacle of her sport, and then the task is to improve upon that. And so that's always a challenging proposition. And so really the intrigue and the excitement is that, well, at the moment, we're not trying to make Molly a better marathoner. We're trying to transition all of this training history and all of this like world-class aerobic capacity over to an entirely different sport. And so, like, you know, the capacity was there. Sure, we had to rebuild a lot of capacity coming off a couple rough years, and we did that pretty quickly. But it was really more of like utilization aspect of her progression, and how do we utilize all of this physiology and all of this fitness that she currently has to the specific demands of what she wants to accomplish in the sport. So that was really exciting for me. And as she said, from a personality perspective, we hit it off right off the bat and knew immediately we were going to be a good fit. And Molly, you're incredibly easy to coach because of your mentality and work ethic. So there's been no challenges thus far.
Work ethic can be, I mean, when you break your patella just through running, there's a work ethic there.
Yeah. There's work
so
ethic,
you got to
and
hold
then
the horse back.
No, it's like psychopathy.
I know my limits as a coach. I'm not a cheerleader. And so
I don't know if Molly needs a cheerleader. Do you?
Exactly.
No,
I don't have to convince her.
It really is. I think so much at the pro level. Like, I see this in myself and I see it in the people around me, because obviously Flagstaff has a huge pro community. But no, I think like the real job of coaches is to keep the athlete from destroying themselves. Like, left to my own devices, I will run myself into the ground every single time. Yep. And I think like there is so much value to having someone there who can like talk through the crazy in your own head and be able to be like, no, like, this is enough. Like, you are working hard. We are doing everything we need to do. Like, even in the last couple of days, like I've had a calf flare up after Bandera. And being able to, like, if left to my own devices, I'd probably like tear my calf in half, just trying to like keep training, but being able to have someone to be like, hey, no, it's more important that we kind of like make sure that we stay at this level so that we can go into Black Canyon healthy. Like, that I think is like truly valuable. And I think that's what separates, like, I honestly think that's what separates like lower level coaches from like high level coaches, is that trust that you can instill, rather than anybody can run someone into the ground. I think it takes a lot more skill to actually like finesse it.
Yeah, that tough love comes in too. Like, hey, you overdid it. We talked about it, and, you know, reining it in, you know, so that's got to go a long way. So what about terminology? You know, I mean, Molly, switching from one coach to another, are the zones, I mean, I just like even these little details, like, are the zones the same? Is the terminology the same? Is threshold the same? Like, these words matter, you know? And so going from one coach to another, was it a simple transition, or were there a little bit of a relearning around intensities, et cetera?
I think probably there was a bit of a learning curve just because trail is different. Marathon is so exact. So much of it is
Yeah.
like, it's
Pacing.
almost more of like pace work that like the zones matter less. And it's more of just getting in steady amounts of time at either race pace or like just below. We were doing a lot of double threshold. So it's just so much time at a very specific
Yeah.
pace. Whereas like trail really varies. I think the first couple like truly trail workouts that we had post NYC, like I totally messed them up because I was like, I don't know how fast to run on these. But I think so much of it is just you spend time doing it and learning, and it like figures itself out. Like now, when Cliff gives me, like today, we had 30 minutes steady or whatnot. Like I know exactly what heart rate I can hold going up Schnebly Hill to like get to what we need to be and
Yeah.
feel like it was a really productive session. But it's like running
Yeah.
is running, to be honest.
We're going after this trail thing, but immediately you announced that you're going to do New York City. So whose idea was this? Why? Obviously it didn't, I don't know if it went to plan or not, but there's the DNF. I got to say too, my daughter lives in New York City. She took one photo that day and it was you at like mile 15. And she like texted me like, I'm at the marathon. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Molly.
Yeah.
And you actually, Cliff, you wrote an article leading up to the New York City Marathon for TrainingPeaks. So if listeners, please go to our blog, check that out. So it's really cool details about training leading up to that. I've talked too much here, but why New York City? What was the purpose of that? Whose idea?
I'll be honest, that was my idea. I'm sure Cliff was kind of like, God damn it. Like
That was the one moment that I was like, this is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, there are certain realities of a pro runner's life. I have not had a contract since last January or so when I left Puma. And so the original plan was to probably do a trail race in the fall. However, when I got a small offer to go to New York City, I was like, got to pay the bills, got to pay the mortgage. Let's just try this. Let's fit it into my threshold block. And yeah, I think I needed the experience of going through another marathon build to really reinforce like it's going to be a while till I run a marathon again. That's just not where my heart is right now. And I think even being back in just that environment of like New York City, it is the biggest of the marathons. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of press. It's a lot of pressure. And I don't get the luxury of going into that as anything less than the Olympic bronze medalist in the marathon. So it's very high expectations. And obviously I was going in off of, we've been doing threshold work, but it's mostly trail focused. So yeah, I think for me, like it was an ego hit. Like, I don't think it was a mistake doing it. I think I needed to learn the lessons that I got from there and also like rip the Band-Aid off of like being able to remember how to train pretty intensely for a marathon build. But yeah, I think just the pain that I experienced of being like, oh yeah, this is not good on my knees right now. And my body isn't responding well to it. I was like, it's time to go full in on
So
trail.
in the race itself, you were feeling that and you decided to pull the pin at 18 miles or something?
Yeah, that's been the limiting factor is the longer sessions on the road in carbon plated shoes is kind of like the last frontier for my knees healing. Like for some reason I can do a 5-hour run on trail with my knees feeling okay, but carbon really, really stresses it. And it's just such a repetitive motion that it immediately came right back. And I'm like, I'm not willing to break my knee again and risk the Black Canyon build. Knowing that New York was like a B race and being like, I'm not willing to hurt myself over this. In the past, I would have.
Yeah. So Cliff, Molly's talked a lot about threshold work, this marathon training being so intense and hard. How do you compare that to what you're implementing now? Is threshold just a small portion or is it all polarized, or how would you compare or contrast the two versus what you guys are kind of focused on now?
Yeah, so great question. And the way that I would look at it is that the principles, the universal principles are all the same, whether it's marathon or 10K or 100-mile training. It's just applied appropriately through the lens of specificity. And so whenever she came to the table with, hey, let's do New York. Well, I was like, well, from a like architecture perspective of how we're progressing towards Black Canyon performance, it actually makes sense. Like threshold work is what we're doing during that block anyways. And so we had to make some hard decisions in terms of, she had a certain time goal she wanted to run that she can share if she wants to, but we had like a 6-week window in order to build enough capacity for her to hit that goal. But we also had to say, like, this is a B race. And so we're going to have to be very careful how we go about this. We do not want to go all in and sell out for this specific time goal at this B race and risk everything that we have beyond that, especially with the history over the last few years and that exact same scenario contributing to some of the setbacks. So we really had to, it was a great experience for us as a coach athlete, brand new coach athlete working together to kind of step back and look at things from a 30,000 foot view and say, yes, we can do this. We can work it in, but we're going to have to make some slight tweaks along the way. You might go in just slightly underprepared, knowing that we got bigger goals in the future. And we'll talk about it in a minute, I'm sure, but we're kind of taking the same look at Black Canyon as well, because this isn't, she's not all in on this one particular goal either. There's bigger goals in the future. So the concepts, though, from a training perspective are the same. We want to spend a certain amount of time at threshold. It lined up well with the marathon. And so we utilize that as a launch point to recover from that marathon and then work our way into specificity for Black Canyon 100K. So how we changed it was we just spent a lot more time doing marathon specific work, almost like a little bit of a hybrid approach of like, we're still building capacity or, lactate clearance, but it's going to be very specific to an outcome goal in a marathon with the lens of we have a lot of work to do on the back end. So we need to recover quickly. You need to make sure you don't get injured. And then we're transitioning into this much lower intensity, higher volume, race specific work for Black Canyon. But specificity still applies. Overload and recovery still applies. Progressive overload still applies. Like it's all the same training principles. It's just applied appropriately.
And are you doing like 3 days in a row, 2 days, 1 day off? What kind of phase are you in? I mean, maybe not now, but because the race is coming up maybe so close, but what is that kind of, is it a block training? What's that kind of look like?
Yeah, it's more of like a block hybrid periodization model where we're borrowing a little bit of block periodization as well as a little bit of classic linear periodization. And what we've focused on specifically with Molly is we needed to enhance the long run, specifically with her background. She hadn't had a lot of time at those like 4 or 5 hour runs. And so we really needed to get that in. But at the same time, we weren't ready to jump up to like 18 to 20 hour training weeks either. So we had to be very careful with the density of training. And that's really where and Molly, I don't know if you want us to share this or not. You can edit it out if Molly says no, but we've been right around 14-hour training weeks, which for someone of her physiology, like she can handle that pretty well. And like, if I were to look, with my crystal ball a year from now, she's going to be significantly higher than that after we absorb some more load and time at that specific load in this style of training. But what we have done is we've manipulated the density of her training. And so we've had these like 2 to 3 day micro blocks where she's accumulating stress on top of stress on top of stress and really building that fatigue resistance because, one thing Molly does not need to improve is her lactate threshold at this point. She doesn't need to improve her VO2 max. Like she's going to start this race with that as a huge advantage for her relative to her competition. And that's just the reality for her throughout the rest of her trail ultra running career. So where we've had to emphasize is fatigue resistance and durability because that has not been a component of her training history, which is novel, which means that she's adapting to it extremely well because it's a new stress for her. But it's also stressful at the same time. So we've had to be very careful with managing that load.
Well, it was confirmed recently in Bandera Congratulations on the victory, the
Thank
overall
you.
victory, course record. Tell us about that distance. Did it go to plan? Tell us about that race.
Yeah, no, Bandera was really fun because I feel like that's the first time that I've gotten to like really specifically test my trail fitness on stuff. Like New
Mhm.
York, I think was a bit of a hit in the face and being like, man, maybe I'm just really not good at running anymore. And Bandera was definitely like very validating to be like, no, this is working.
Yeah.
And even then, like the race definitely did not go to plan. Like I really messed up my nutrition in that race, and the last 10 miles were a bloodbath for me. So I think immediately, like we came away from that one being like, okay, we have a lot of stuff that we can improve on. Like I feel like I raced the first probably 15 to 20 of that very, very well. And then things definitely went south from a nutrition and gut standpoint. And that is probably going to be the biggest factor because in a marathon is relatively so short that you don't have to worry about electrolytes. You really don't have to worry about your fueling that much. Whereas in ultra, that is just not an option. And Cliff had been
Yeah.
really on my case about figuring out sodium levels. And I'm like, whatever, I don't need electrolytes. And then I projectile vomited for 10 miles straight. And so I think something like that is like, I can't get to mile 30 of Black Canyon and be that down bad. Like, I need to lock this in. So I think it's that, like, Bandera went really well and it was very fun to get to like race hard. But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, we got a lot of things that we need to dial in the next month that we have training for Black Canyon.
That's why you have those B and C races, right?
Yeah, and I'll just add, like that's
That you set course records on and have a whole time at it. Sorry, Cliff. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, like that's exactly right. That's why we have B races, and that was exactly our objective. Like when we met the week before race day, it was like, hey, we're going to go out there, we're going to get validation for where you're at, and we're hopefully going to uncover some areas for improvement. Like there's probably going to be something that we say come back from and be like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and improve something. And so that was a very good, useful experience for Molly, and then also for me. And it led to us bringing in Stephanie Howe to help facilitate and accelerate the nutrition hydration piece. And it's just going to be some small tweaks. And, once we get that, we don't have to figure it out, but once we're applying it consistently over the next few weeks, it's going to be a game changer for us.
Okay. So it sounds like that was isolated to electrolytes, sodium, that particular issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Separate from that is just overall energy consumption. How has that changed from marathon training to trail racing training?
Very different. I think just in the amount of time that I've devoted to like really practicing it and being very specific about the amount of grams of carbs per hour. I think in marathon, a lot of how I focused race nutrition is like, oh, during the race, I'm going to take X amount of carbs. Generally, it was 60 grams of carbs an hour, but I was very lackadaisical about taking it in training because I think there really still is this mentality in marathon and especially track of, oh, you don't need to be taking all those carbs. You've got to be as light as possible. That's too much. And so that was really the biggest shift going into ultra. And I think that's why my body has responded better to it, just because so much of it is like, this is an eating competition while moving. Like you have to just get in as much as possible. I upped it to, I'm usually averaging about 80 grams of carbs an hour pretty steadily. I use Morton and that's been great. Like I find that my energy balance has been a lot better and I'm able to like keep power output for these longer sessions. That was the shocking thing of being like, oh, like I can run for 4 to 5 hours and still feel okay. Bonkers.
Right. I mean, that affects tomorrow's workout, right? The recovery factor.
Like I would do, this is like crazy, but like, especially in college and like my first few years as a pro, fasted long runs were such a big thing. And I would be ruined for like days afterwards, but it's like, oh, you have to be fat adapted. You have to train your body to do this. But that just got me like severe reds instead. And so it's like, this has been a really positive change of being like, oh, I can be like absolutely slamming carbohydrates and recover faster and run better overall.
Was that a transition? We say training the gut. Was that a process or immediate success?
No, it was definitely a process. I struggled with doing it just off of gels and drink mix at first. I would have to use Rice Krispie treats for a lot of it just because like I almost needed like a real food to handle. And I
Yeah.
definitely had to like work overtime to bump it up like that. But no, it's actually like that's been the fun part of being like, oh, this is a very trainable thing.
Nice. Nice. Um, Ultra has a lot of other technical aspects of it. Downhill descending, rocks. How have you adapted to that? Were you natural for it? Are you working on it? How does that fit with your natural running style?
Oh, I'm definitely not naturally good at technical trails.
Okay.
My collegiate coach once told me I was the worst downhill runner he'd ever seen. So that luckily as well is very trainable. So much of like the marathon, you just get used to very flat roads. Like marathoners are notoriously terrible on trails. And so I just needed to like devote the time and effort to really nailing it down and doing technical stuff, getting on trails in Texas and Flagstaff, going into the canyon, going down to Sedona, being willing to be really bad at it for a while. I think that's it. It's the first couple runs. I definitely like, I messaged Cliff after this one loop that I had done in Sedona. I was like, I think I might be the worst technical runner in all of trail running. I don't know if I can do this. He's like, you're fine. You're going to adapt. And I did. I wouldn't say that I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to put myself up there with the Golden Trails girls, but like it's getting there. And I think the more time I devote on trails, the more the neuromuscular like systems develop there. It just takes time.
Yeah.
And her goal setting has been appropriate for that limitation and for that progression. And so, she's not coming into the sport and picking the most technical mountain races possible. We're going to take our time and adapt and go through a smart progression into the sport. And, Black Canyon, sure, there's definitely some technical sections on there, but at the same time, it's a very runnable race that suits the type of athlete that Molly is. And, if we do have Lena at the end of this year, it's like extremely runnable race as well. Yeah. So like we're leaning into already where she's at as an athlete and embracing that. And then we'll progress, with over time to get into more of the other stuff that, she's interested in, but she's more natural than she realizes. And so, when I'm looking at the data, I'm just kind of like, yeah, you're fine.
I should also still do.
No, basically,
we're just not seeing a massive degradation.
Yeah, when I got on the Bandera course, I went out the week before the race to go like check it out and just see what it was going to be like. And certain portions of that Bandera course are incredibly technical. Like there's very runnable areas, but I remember coming away from that and like being in the middle of the run, being like, Cliff is trying to kill me like right now. Like, why did he choose this technical of a race for me for my prep race? But then I'm like, oh, that's just trail running.
Yeah. Well, I heard you on another podcast and you mentioned how one of the male athletes on your heels
ate shit behind me. Yes.
You heard him.
But
yeah.
So part of the reason, like, I think everyone's like, oh my God, it's crazy that like you wanted to go out with the men in that race. The reason that I went out so hard is because I knew how technical the first 9 miles of that race were because I'd run it before. And I was like, I'm not like going to let myself sit behind someone and risk falling, because when you don't have that like line of vision out in front of you, like it's harder to pick your line. And so much of the Bandera course is almost like physically jumping down these very loose rocky sections. I was like, I don't want someone in front of me. So that's why I went out hard and why I was like really running so hard to keep the lead the first few miles with those 2 men behind me, because I was like, I need to be able to have a clear line of sight. And that's probably, that race is the best technical running I've done ever. I was in it being just like, this is not me. I don't run like this.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So the overarching goal this year is Black Canyons. Like what's after that? Are you signed up for anything else this fall?
Okay, so I would actually say the overarching goal this year is not the races. The overarching goal this year is to get the skills that I need in trail running and ultra to be able to like fully transition into this sport. Like I look at this year as a transitional year. And Black Canyon is definitely part of that. Whatever races I can qualify for afterwards or we plan to do after are going to be towards the goal of entering 2027 being like all gas, no brakes. But this year very much is going into this knowing I am a rookie in this sport. I am coming in not expecting anything. Like, obviously, like I have an Olympic medal. That doesn't mean anything on the trails. And I am going to do the races that I need to do this year and try and gain the skills to try and be one of the top ultra runners in the world. But realizing like it is a steep learning curve, I will make mistakes. I'm not going to necessarily like know all the things or be strong enough to like reach the goals that I've set. I'm looking at this as a multi-year like thing.
And I just want to
Cliff,
say
yeah.
publicly how much I appreciate that mindset from Molly. I think it's pretty special that, yes, you can hear the self-efficacy and the confidence because of what she's done and how she believes in herself, but you can also hear the humility, knowing that, yes, this is novel and it's going to be a process just like anything else. And I think that really sets her up for future successes because she's approaching this with humility, but also with self-efficacy at the same time. And holding those two things at the same time are hard to do at times. So that's definitely a component of her mental game that separates her from a lot of the field.
Yeah. What race drives you, Molly, that's out there?
To be honest, Western States. Like the goal, I think, starting out on this has always been Western States. I've loved the idea of doing that race since I was a kid. Like many young running nerds, I read Born to Run at a very young age, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I want to be like Scott Jurek. So I
Yeah.
think for me, that is the overarching goal. And the goal is not to go to Western States. The goal is to fully race Western States. So whether that means getting to do it this year, whether that means getting to do it next year, we're going to fit it in a place where I can show up to the line and feel extremely competitive there and not just be happy to be on the line. And I'm willing to put like the immediate gratification of getting to do that race on hold in order to fully build myself up to be the kind of racer on that line that I know I can be.
Yeah, you respect that event, that course, and the demands of it,
I like
building up to it.
That's the thing. Everyone talks about how runnable Western States is, but like it still is a very difficult course. Like I've watched the live stream of it. Like that's crazy going up going up Palisades right at the beginning. So like I want to approach it with the respect that it deserves, but also know like, okay, it takes time to develop into being a good 100-mile runner. And I know my body. I know that I don't want to overcook myself right away. Like I want to be doing this sport for the next 10 years. I don't need to get everything right away. Maybe it comes from like having experienced in marathon, getting everything right at once, and then my body completely breaking down of being like, I'm willing to be patient if it means that I get to do this for a long time at a high level.
Awesome. How often, Cliff, do you change the training? You know, if you plan next week, Monday through Sunday, is it going to stay as is, or are you guys talking every day and micro adjusting every day?
We're talking most every day. Micro adjustments pretty frequent. There's been blocks where everything's gone exactly as planned, and then there's been, blocks where we've had to make daily adjustments. And so it kind of just depends on where we're at, what we're trying to accomplish, where Molly's at, travel, holidays, like all of those things impact it. But, I would say that we're in touch on an almost daily basis. I'm in her training files on a daily basis. And it's very much we're making minute by minute decisions essentially to get everything we possibly can out of this so that she's fully optimized and also protected. Adaptations happen, but life happens too. And so training has to adjust and account for all of that, like Molly as an entire person. And so like, she does a fantastic job with excellent feedback, and I trust her immensely. So she has a lot of autonomy in her training. And so like just today we had a call this morning, and it was like, we had a scheduled workout, but she's dealing with this nagging calf. And so she had some guardrails to work within. And then she was able to make the decision on whether she was going to complete that run or if she was going to pull the plug. So she knows her body better than I ever could.
Yeah. But I think that
she just wants to ski more.
I just want to be skiing. No, but I think that that's what I really appreciate out of a coaching relationship. Like I've had time coming from an NCAA background, like I've had the experience where if you need to change something, you're getting screamed at. And where it's very much like, oh no, like the point of training is to stick to this plan. And if you can just stick to the plan, you're going to be a champion. And I don't think that's how actual like human physiology works. And so what I really appreciate about Cliff is that he's so open to feedback, and he is like, he puts a lot of trust in me. And I think that that makes me more likely to want to be open and to want to talk about things and be able to say like, hey, this is hurting. Because if I say that, I know that he's going to listen and not just be angry that I'm not doing the workouts that he is so perfectly designed for me. But I like, ultimately, I think that's why this works. Like I got very sick the week before Bandera. We had to adjust a lot of things for that. But because we adjusted, it allowed me to show up to the line in Bandera and come away with the win. Whereas I think if we tried to train through it, like I probably would have been like pretty down bad still by the race. So I think it's that so I don't know. I think coaching and training is more of an art than a science sometimes, though it's very sciencey. I know Cliff likes the science. I'm a very vibes based athlete. But I think that that's why this works so well.
That was my next question. What, Cliff, how much of it is it art versus science?
Behind the scenes, it's science. With Molly, it's art. And so I have to be able to, I have to be able to work in both domains. And Love so it. When I'm communicating with Molly and, you know, we're having dialogue and ongoing communication, it's very much the art side of things. And, you know, I just had this conversation with my coaches today on a team call. It's like, we can be the most knowledgeable coaches in the room with all the science and evidence-based training principles, and none of that matters if we can't apply it to each individual in a way that's efficacious for their unique circumstances, right? The individuality principle at play there. And so there has to be both. There has to be evidence-based training, and there has to be the art of coaching, and they have to be able to work together to get the most out of any particular athlete. Absolutely. So Molly, are you looking at the data? Are you a data geek? Like, or is it all, you know, can you care less what the data said?
I think I strike a middle balance. I think it's very context dependent. I love being able to have the data to look back on. And I think especially being able to like look at past performances or like control, like, hey, like my heart rate over this portion of trail last time was much higher than it was this time, this workout. But I don't think I get overly wrapped up in the data side of things. I think I leave a lot of that to Cliff to be able to like look objectively at how I'm training, because so much of my experience with training is kind of that like subjective experience and like my lived experience of training. Like it's like how I'm feeling, my rate of perceived exertion, and how I'm able to like physically run it. Whereas like Cliff is then able to like look at the objective data coming out of it and then build from there too. So I think we need both sides of that, but I am very woo-woo when it comes to a lot of this. And I think there is very much like a point of having the data. I just don't get too wrapped up in it.
Yeah. So what about the feedback after a workout? What are you asking for, Cliff, from Molly? You know, is it post-workout comments? Like, how does that occur? Or is that just natural for you, Molly? You just like put in paragraphs of how it felt.
I feel like my post-workout comments are like all over the place. Like I'll be like very specific of like the number of carbs that I had like at each like 30-minute interval throughout a 5-hour run. And then also like, and I saw a cool bird flying overhead or something like that, where it's like, nice. It's all over the place. No, legitimately. I think I did talk about that in one run. I'm like, I threw up at mile 14. It was definitely the vortex that was like right at the base of Wilson Mountain.
Well, that helps you, right, Cliff? That's the
huge.
I mean, the RP is almost number one, right?
Yeah, That's huge. The subjective feedback, especially in our sport, especially in trail and ultra running, because we are so far removed from precision. And so like my prescription has to be, it can't be surgical because we're not necessarily precisely measuring, for example, a power meter, you have a mechanical measurement of power in watts. We don't have that in trail and ultra running. We have a variability of surfaces and elevation change and environmental, factors. So we're so far removed from precision that I have to heavily rely on subjective feedbacks to make sense of what I'm seeing in the data.
Yeah.
So sometimes I might get data that looks really wonky and I'm like, that was not a zone 3 effort. And then it's like, oh, you were running on, you were down climbing or you're running on rocks. Like she's not down climbing in training. But my point is that there's a lot of things that could influence that. And so she does such a good job leaving her feedback, whether it be, on TrainingPeaks or, through text, email communication, that I have the whole picture to work with. And that's extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about getting more precise, do you ever do controlled indoor treadmill type workouts and or testing? Like
I really don't.
We tried to do some testing. Yeah, we tried.
Sorry.
I tried to get her. We tried to arrange some metabolic testing at our headquarters, the CTS headquarters in Colorado Springs, and it just didn't work up with holiday schedules and stuff. But I did. Not so much I didn't want to see like VO2 max or lactate threshold. It's not like we needed to dial in paces. Like I can extract all of that from her workout data. What I really wanted to get was like oxidation rates. And I felt like that would be something really beneficial.
Mm-hmm. And
substrate utilization.
I think down the line, like especially like I feel like the last few months have been a little bit crazy. I think down the line as I have a little bit more like free time and flexibility to do it, that's something that I'd really love to like lock in. Because like I've never really had my like VO2 max tested. I've never had like my LT like fully tested. I've done like lactate testing on my own. Like I have a lactate meter. And so that's something that we might employ eventually. I use it more in marathon training.
Besides Molly, the people want to know.
Yeah.
People want to know.
People want to know what I'm doing. The only time like I had done some like efficiency testing for Puma, and it's so tough. I am such a princess when it comes to this, but it's like those masks that you have to wear in the testing. The minute I put it on, I was like, I'm ready to rip this damn thing off. Like I can't do this.
Yeah, I hear you. There's also been talk about you possibly going after 2028 Olympics. That's kind of floating out there as well, right?
I think that's like, for me, running is running. And though I'm fully invested in trail and like my future is going to be in trail running, I don't think I'm ever going to fully go back to the marathon. I think I still have a dream of being able to say like, okay, when I'm healthy and training well, like I would love to be able to see what I can do when I have a couple years of like fully healthy training under my belt. Like I want to medal off of 1 year of healthy training. I had been brutally injured leading into that. So I think there's such this elitism in the road world. And especially with my transition to trail, I think there's been a little bit of like a questioning on the road side of like, okay, so is she just like retiring and like doing this for fun? I'm like, no, like I'm approaching this very seriously. And I would love to get to stick it to like some of the road world being like, no, you can actually be a better runner, like focusing on trail. So I think that would kind of be the dream. But in all honesty, we're going to approach the next few years fully invested in trail, fully invested in my goals on the trail. And if running the 2028 trials fits into that and I'm feeling strong, we will do it. But I think we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it. I think that's definitely a dream, but I have a lot of other goals that I really want to put my time and energy into right now. And I've gotten to live the dream of a top level road runner. And I really want to see what I can do. And I put all of that energy into trail.
Okay. So the next big goal here is Black Canyon, a little more than 2 weeks away. How do you see that going? Have you previewed it yet or ran any of it?
Yeah, so we actually went down and previewed it last weekend. Went down with a couple friends. I got another one of my friends to run bottles for us to go to each of the aid stations. And it was actually great getting on the course because I was actually surprised by a number of things on there. One, it's technical, but it is a lot more runnable than I expected. It's a very, it's not California carpet by any means, but it's much less rocky than something like Sedona. So I'm very excited for that aspect of it. There are so many gates that you have to open on that course, and I've heard that they don't open them for you. So that's a whole thing there. Like, we kept getting to them. I'm like, each gate is its own opening mechanism. Like, it's almost like a brain challenge each time.
And are you having someone else do it and you have to close it behind you?
Well, no,
like
apparently there's a whole strategy to it. So like the lead men, nobody wants to be the first one to the gate because then they're trying to open it and everyone's screaming at them. So I am very much hoping that there will be some very quick men that are very nice and will open the gates for us. But no, I was like, why are there so many of these? That and cattle guards. I hate cattle guards. But no, we did 25 on it last Saturday. It went great. It was really fun getting to like practice it. Depending on this weekend, we might try to go down again. Cause I know Jim Walmsley and Francesco Pupi are out here training as well. I think they're both doing it. So we might try to drive down this weekend and check it out again. Cause I love getting to see a course and like specifically run the terrain that I'm going to be doing in the race. I felt like that really helped with Bandera. And I think just getting eyes on different portions of the course will be good. So I've now seen the start to Gloriana Mine, and I've seen the portion of Black Canyon City, maybe like, I don't know, 7 miles beyond that, except I forgot to bring a headlamp and it was completely dark. So I don't know how much I've actually seen of that portion. But yeah, I've seen portions of the course.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And Cliff, thanks so much for giving us insights into how you're helping Molly in the future. And it's going to be so fun to watch your progression. It's a great story. I love the art side of it versus the science side of it. You guys are yin and yang, so that's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. That was so enlightening.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to Endurance Unlimited. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on your platform of choice to never miss new episodes. Also, be sure to leave a 5-star rating to let your coach and the algorithm know you're ready to dial in your training. Find more resources to help you take on your next challenge at TrainingPeaks.com or find us on social media at TrainingPeaks. Got questions? Leave a comment or send an email to podcast@TrainingPeaks.com. Good luck in whatever you're training for and trust the process to reach your potential.